With Andrea Berta about to be confirmed as Arsenal's new sporting director, there's already been a lot of rumours about what this summer will hold for the Gunners. Now in this video we're going to go through some of the recent rumours about transfers and talk about what we can learn from Arsenal's transfer list going into this summer. So let's get into it. Now there's no doubt about it, this season is one of the most important summer windows that Arsenal are ever going to have, and I think it could be the one that takes us to that title. Now unfortunately this season hasn't exactly gone how we wanted it to on the pitch and off the pitch. I think there's been a lot of big messes and mistakes that we have made, but we are ultimately still in a good position, and with other teams having aging players and players leaving, we still have a very young team with that potential to win anything if they can stay fit. Now this is where the summer comes involved. We also know that we have to make a big rebuild, especially in that midfield and attacking areas, and I am for one expecting Arsenal to spend a lot of money. Now financially we've already made more money in this Champions League campaign than last year, even though we got to the same space, and coming second in the Premier League again will help financially get us over the top. And when you think about the fact that Arsenal made money last summer and haven't spent any money in the last two January windows, we should be in a great area to spend money, and that does seem like that's the case, because Ben Jacobs has reported on Twitter that Andrea Berta has been given around 300 mil this summer and is expected to finalise some deals that Arsenal's recruitment have already spoke about. Now in my video about Andrea Berta and what you can expect right now, I spoke about this. Maybe he'll be given free rein to get a couple of signings in, but ultimately his job this summer is going to be to finalise the deals that Arsenal have already agreed, such as the Martin Zubimendi deal, and even people like Severa Nipan and people like Benjamin Šeško who have been talked to quite a lot. Now this does seem like the case. It seems like he has been speaking to Zubimendi to get that over the line. I think we'll talk about Zubimendi in a couple of days time, because I watched his performance against Man United. I think a lot of people weren't impressed, and this season he has been on and off, I would say, quite a lot, but I would say as a defensive midfielder for a team that are very poor on the ball, I think I will give him a little bit of leeway, but I still think Arsenal need to sign more midfielders. Now a lot of people may be confused about this, because realistically Zubimendi is going to be a big chunk of money, around £50 million, and he is going to be a big starting player, but I still think Arsenal need a little bit more. Now I think we will probably end up getting Severa Nipan. Now that's my opinion, no links of course, but he is only 18 and he is more of that creative player. Now I look at Arsenal's midfield though, and with Jorginho and Partey leaving, maybe if you buy a left back, which has also been linked quite a lot, maybe you can move Miles Skelly more into that midfield as well, but I still don't think that's going to help that creativity too much. Personally I think Arsenal needs to really consider how much money they want to spend on this midfield, and I wouldn't be against spending more money on players that can play in multiple roles or will offer us something different, because sometimes I just think we play a little bit one-dimensional in the middle, and people like Rice can't be your answer to everything. Going forward I still think there is a big worry about him. Now this is where there has been other links. Bruno Guimarães, who is a player that we spoke about quite a long time ago actually, has been linked with apparently Andrea Berta wanting to bring him to the club. Now these reports probably don't come from the most reliable of sources in the world, and it isn't exactly concrete, but apparently Bruno Guimarães has a 70 mil agreement with Newcastle that they will let him leave if they do not get Champions League football, which is still up in the air with their league position, something that could still be avoided by them as well. Now Bruno Guimarães is a player that I have liked for a while. I think as a central midfielder, as a progressive player, he can kind of do everything. He's physical, he's really good in a tackle, but he also can progress that ball and is pretty prolific, I'd say, in the box when he actually gets in there. Not really necessarily a box crusher, but someone you can have on the edge of it, and I do think he would offer quite a lot for Arsenal given the fact he is Premier League experienced, and I do think he is still a very top player. Now the thing is, Newcastle's situation as a whole is a bit interesting. I believe that they will have to sell one of their big stars eventually to continually buy players that they need. They need a right winger, they need defenders, so one of their big stars is going to have to go. Now that might not be Bruno Guimarães, he might end up staying, but it will have to be someone, and obviously you look at Alexander Isak, who is someone that they want £140 million for, who I do not think Arsenal should spend that money for. Might be controversial because he isn't a top talent, he is arguably, I think, the best striker in the world right now, but Arsenal need way too many other players around the squad to be spending half a budget or over half a budget on one player. I kind of hate this notion that Arsenal's issues are just down to not buying a striker. It definitely would have helped, and I think even now when you go into them Real Madrid game, having a striker would be a much better option than Marino, who I'm not the biggest fan of at striker at the moment. But Arsenal have more issues as well than just a striker option, especially with the midfielders leaving in the summer, the fact we've got to sort out our left backs and centre back issue, but we have issues on the wing, I still think, and creatively from that midfield. It's not just about a striker taking the chances. If you take corners and set pieces out of it, I still think we have actually struggled this season overall, and I think it's quite blinded by XG stats and XG against stats before Saka got injured that we were actually this incredible creative team. Arsenal are always an on and off team, and some tactically we really do dominate some games. People like Sporting, we were brilliant. Palace, we were brilliant against, but it isn't like that all the time. There is games where we just do not really offer a lot. The Fulham game, the West Ham game, the Everton game as well. Like, these games are quite common as well, and I do think we're not that undeniable creative team that are going to create a lot every single game, and I do think that would still help as well. Now, this is why I think Bruno could be good. He can definitely do a lot of creatively work. He switches it really quickly in the middle of the park, which I always loved, what I spoke about before. And if we can't get Isak, if Isak's out of the portions of the money wise, getting Bruno Guimarães to around 70 to 80 mil, I think would be a good deal. Now, I know people are going to say that's too cheap, but if you put Isak at the level of 140 mil, maybe that's reasonable for Bruno. They still have brilliant midfielders. They have Miley coming through, Tonelli, of course, who has been brilliant this season. It's not like Newcastle can just afford to keep every single one of their brilliant players when they're realistically not competing for that Premier League and Champions League every year. Now, they might win the Carabao Cup on this weekend, and fair play to them if they do, but you can't keep incredible world talents that just sit on a team that aren't exactly pushing for that top level. You know, Newcastle aren't consistently getting far in the Champions League. They've only been in it once recently, and they got grouped last year. They need to have some sort of realization that you can't keep everyone, and if we can't get Isak, I don't want him going to Liverpool personally, so let's just get Bruno and maybe solve their financial restraints out at least now. Now, the reason why I did this video is because even if these links aren't true, I think it does show a picture of what Arsenal could potentially do this summer. Now, I've heard bands around Arsenal having to be able to spend 300 mil, and although that may be a little bit more than I probably expect, I still think Arsenal need to be spending around 200 million pounds this year because we need a lot of players. This summer is going to be an incredible summer for Arsenal in some ways, even bad or good. You think about the players that we need to get rid of, even on its own. In defence, you've got Kivior, Tierney's leaving on a free, Zinchenko, potentially Tomiyasu, but I mean, unlikely with his injury, I guess. And then in midfield, you've got Partey and Jorginho leaving, and then in the forward areas, you've even got talks there. I mean, Trossard could potentially leave. I mean, that's up in the air. Maybe Martinelli if we get a good enough offer. Jesus probably won't leave because of his ACL, but you expect him to probably be near the end of the door in January or the summer later. So there's going to have to be a lot of a rebuild, and we need to build around the core of the team. People like Saka, Rice, Saliba, Gabriel and Raya, which will be there for the time coming. This is why I do not hate the fact that Arsenal would be looking at Bruno Guimarães and Zubimendi. I still think we need to get more depth around the team and help us a lot more push, and we need more midfielders that offer different things. Bruno's a brilliant player. He can rest Rice sometimes. He can play with Rice when we're playing a little bit more aggressive, because you put yourself in a situation where Zubimendi gets injured. Who are we going to play there in DM? Maybe Lewis Skelly, but even then I don't really think he's a sitter. He's still more of a mover around that midfield, and we need depth, and we just do not have that. We can get some young players in as well, which I'm hoping Aguame, maybe from Seville, is a good DM option, and I think Napan as well would be another player that would probably broaden that midfield depth, but he's going to come as a left centre midfielder. We already have Marino, Rice, people like Lewis Skelly who can play there. That also means that is Rice your backup defensive midfielder? I mean, that's fine, I guess, but still a bit of a risk considering he'll be playing most of the games on the left anyway. And I think Arsenal personally need 2 or 3 more forwards, so there's going to be a lot that happens. Now, I think we've got positive signs that they are going to spend a lot of money, not only with the links, but I just believe that they will. I feel like we have to at this point, and we need to buy a lot of players. Some players don't need to cost the most money in the world to be great and to have great potential, but I want to see Arsenal realistically spend a lot of money and get more players in. I think we've moved past the fact that if we had Šeško, Nico Williams, Zubimendi and João Garcia, I just don't think that's even enough right now. I think that would be great, and we could probably win the league with them 4 coming in, maybe with the players leaving, but I still don't think that's enough. We've learnt this season that we need to give more players a go. We need to have a bigger squad because the depth isn't there. And not only is the depth not there, these players are getting injured because they're having to play more because players are not there, or players are just not good enough. I've seen people on the internet say that we should keep Zinchenko and Kivior because they're good depth, but they're not good depth really, are they? They're good depth for left back and left centre back when we play games that don't matter. Are you wanting to play Kivior when it actually matters in big games? No. Are you wanting to play Zinchenko against teams that Arsenal don't have the ball against? No. And that is one of the severe problems Arsenal have with their depth. If these players aren't being able to come in and do a shift in any game, then realistically, why are they here? They're taking up substitute spots in the team. And I know Zinchenko played relatively well in attacking midfield against PSV, but he is basically our backup left back. We already have loads of left backs. Kivior is our backup left centre back and left back behind people like Miles, Calafiori, who you would argue is ahead of him now. And we don't need him to be a backup and left back. It's not like he can come into midfield and help us there if Partey gets injured. He can't. So I think Arsenal need to get people with depth who can facilitate the squad a lot more, and people that are just good enough or have a little bit of potential there. You know, Severo Napan's a guy I've mentioned a few times. He might not be that level right now. He's only 18. But at least with him, he's young, he's exciting, and you know that he can play in a wide range of positions in midfield, even out on the left, where it gives you that option. And it's the same reason why I think people like Nico Williams or Semenyo, whoever we get out of them two wingers, I'm hoping it's one of them, works, because they can play on the left, they can play on that right, and they're so effective within the box that arguably you could play them as a striker. Semenyo definitely could play as a striker if he needed to. And I think that is one of the major things that Arsenal are missing throughout their team right now. Now, hopefully Arsenal do spend the money this summer. I think that's a major point. I think we have to. I think we'll expect a lot of players to come in and go out, and it's a big turnover for the team. We need to give more rest to people like Saka, arguably Odegaard as well, Declan Rice. So I would say I'm very excited for this summer right now, and my expectations are high, and they have, I think, got to deliver, because Andrea Berta is not an appointment that you make where you want to sign project players for the future. Andrea Berta is a player that buys players for now and wants to achieve big things now, and I think the appointment of him as well tells us that. If Arsenal was still in this project system, I'm not necessarily sure what we wanted to do. I think Jason Ato would have been hired in charge. Maybe January flipped them a little bit on that, but in my opinion, they probably had Berta in mind after he left at the start of Jan. But he is a signing that shows intent in the market and a belief and an ability and some ambition that we want to win within the next 2 seasons, which is exactly when we should have. We probably should have this year. I think that's been the major disappointment going into this year. We all kind of expected a bit more, but that's absolutely fine if we can make up for it next season. And it's very important that we make the team more broader and become a better squad. And I do think, considering Arteta has got this sort of identity of being a little bit ruthless, you think about people like Ramsdale, you even think about Rob Holding. I know Rob Holding was never great for us, but Rob Holding was at the club a long time, and he had that one season he was awful in, and then we shipped him off and we've never cared about him since. You know, even Nuno Tavares, he didn't really want him to develop, gave up on him. Like, he has this ruthlessness nature with certain players, but there's also other players he doesn't have this with. People like Odegaard, who has been amazing for Arsenal overall, and obviously one of our leaders, I get it, but I think we need that ruthlessness around the squad. Zinchenko needs to go. Jesus, when he comes back from his ACL, has to go. I don't even think he could play brilliantly anymore to even change my mind in that. I think we've kind of just run our course with some of these players. I've seen some links to Arsenal looking at frees of Leroy Sané, even Kimmich, who's now signed a new deal. I don't mind it. It depends obviously on wages, but maybe that little bit of experience in there. If you're wanting to sign, let's say we sign Nico Williams, so 60 mil just over his release clause, he's on 280k a week. Let's say that happens. And then you sign Benjamin Šeško as your striker. You still need a little bit more depth. Reece Nelson's probably not going to stay here long. Fabio Vieira's probably not going to stay here long. I think in that forward area, Saka still needs rest. Williams can always come over to the right, which is why I think that's a great signing. Or Semenyo, he can do the same. But getting a Sané also offers that as well. And I think if you can get players that are knowing that they're not going to start every game, I think that's a major thing, but they can push their way into the team. A bit like that Calafiori mentality, and Trossard to a lot of an extent. Now, I know this video's been a bit of a ramble mess, but I just kind of want to get my feelings about what I think is going to happen this summer and my expectations. Obviously, going into the summer, we'll make loads of videos about the perfect summer, transfers we should make. We'll go analytically and look at every single player linked under the blue moon. But just as my expectations before the summer starts right now, I wanted to make it clear, and before Andrea Berta comes in. But let me know in the comments who you think we should sign. It's a really important time. Put every single transfer you think that we should make and all the money, because then we can go through it and definitely talk about it in the future. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.